Okay, so you'll note that I did not include nuclear energy as a source of renewable energy. And this is because it doesn't take into consideration the system's perspective. So you remember that our principles of sustainability, the four principles, one of those was that it must take into consideration a system's perspective. And you can ask yourself, well, why doesn't it take into consideration a system's perspective? And the answer is that it doesn't take into consideration waste disposal. And so the waste that is produced from the nuclear power plants is just so difficult to deal with, and it's going to last and last way, way into the future. It's not something that you can easily dispose of. So therefore, it could not be sustainable. It's not a sustainable, in my opinion, source of energy. So when we look at nuclear energy, it has to do with atoms. And so remember that we talked about the periodic table, and we talked about carbon and nitrogen and oxygen and phosphorus and sulfur, those atoms that are very common in living things. But there's also other atoms that are very uncommon in living things. And some of these atoms emit energy. So they are found in unstable forms. And you'll remember that these are called isotopes. So one of these is uranium. And so uranium generally is not found in high concentrations in any one particular place on the planet. So it is diffuse. So we have to go in and we have to find the uranium deposits, and then we have to extract and concentrate the uranium. So the uranium that is used for nuclear energy is uranium-235. And so this is a radioactive isotope. Radioactive isotope. So what this means is it undergoes decay. So it starts to break apart. So it decays. And as it undergoes what is called fission, and you'll notice this is not fusion. So fission is breaking apart. Fusion, when we put things together, that would be fusion. So fission is breaking that apart. So fission causes the nucleus to break apart. And as it does so, it is going to be converted into another element, and it is going to release energy. So the fission of the nucleus, releases energy. And it releases a lot of energy in the form of like neutrons that are like coming out. And so this is not something that you would want to be exposed to because it causes damage to our organic molecules, including our DNA. So you can get radioactive poisoning, right? Which causes your body to just start to break down. And so the idea of this is that it could produce a lot of energy. And one of the good things about nuclear energy is that it does not produce greenhouse gases, right? So no carbon dioxide or very little carbon dioxide or other air pollutants are released. So when you go by a nuclear power plant, they have those big towers and you're like, what is coming out of the tower? And those are cooling towers, and it is just steam that is coming out. Because as these chemicals decay, they release some heat energy that can be converted into steam that could then power electric turbines, and then we could generate electricity. So that is not CO2, or very little CO2 is being released. So that's a good thing about this nuclear energy. The bad thing is that meltdowns of nuclear reactors, like what happened recently in Japan with Fukushima, but also with Chernobyl many, many years ago, is the cost of nuclear energy. So the cost is just enormous if things go wrong. And so you can have whole areas of land that are unusable for even centuries or even thousands of years because of the radioactive levels. And with Fukushima, they have a lot of radioactive water that they were able to contain, but they can't store it all. And so even now they're thinking about in 2021 about what they're going to do with this radioactive water. And the plan is just to release it into the Pacific Ocean, which then is going to become diffuse, and maybe it won't cause a problem, but maybe it will. So nuclear energy it could have been so amazing, this free energy, but the problem is the cost of the waste disposal and the cost, the human life cost and the ecological cost of what happens if something goes wrong with the nuclear power plant.